room, if you look at the window, if everyone can turn around, paint is right back there. You see them in a line? And it has, I think, whatever, like white, the reds, the yellows, and blues. And notice how there's two of each primary color. Okay, so you have a warmer color and a cooler color. So magenta and red, you have a phthalo blue and an ultramarine blue, and they're different. So if you look on my palette that I have here, you can see that one of the blues is much darker than the other. One of them has more of kind of a warmer look to it, kind of orangey, yellow. This one's much brighter. And then here, one of them is more pink and the other is more red. Okay, so there's two different versions of each primary color, which is going to give you a lot of different options. Okay, so if I want to make my orange, okay, I know I have to do yellow and red, but I get to choose which one I want to do, and it's going to give me some combinations. So I'm going to first start with my yellow because it's my lighter of the colors, okay, and I'm going to take a little bit on my paintbrush and I'm going to put it to the side on my palette. Now you guys are going to use these as your palette, okay, and then I'm going to choose which red I want to do. So I'll choose this one here. I'm going to just start with just a little bit of my red and I'm going to mix it in to my yellow. That is still like a little bright, so I'm going to add a little bit more. I start by adding tiny little bits at a time, and notice I'm not taking my paintbrush and like making really big swirls. I'm kind of keeping it condensed so that way it stays wet longer. Okay, this paint you'll find is going to dry super fast. I just think that's a pretty good orange. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my orange and I'm going to first put a little bit down here, and now I have to add its complement a little bit at a time. Okay, so again, now I choose what blue I want to use and I keep it consistent. So I'll start with this one. Okay, very, very little. I have almost nothing on my brush, and you're going to see how dramatically that changes it. Well, to me, it's kind of dramatic. Okay, so if I put it next to it, it's starting to get a little bit less bright, starting to mute it a little bit, make it a little bit more neutral. And then I add a tiny bit more. So if you, like, I'm not making my orange again every single time. I have it once, and then I add a little bit of blue. If you go in and you add a lot of blue to it, it's not gonna, the process isn't gonna work. So you have to really think about how much you're actually adding. So it slowly gets to that other color, which the other color would be your blue. More. You can see that it's starting to turn a little bit more green. That one didn't change so much, so I'm going to add more blue to that and go right on top. Okay, by the time I get to my last one, I should be you definitely want to have paper towel on you, okay? Because anytime you wash off your brush, oops, you don't want to do that. Anytime you wash off your brush, you want to make sure you get all the water out, okay? Otherwise, it'll be so transparent. So by the time you get to the last one, it's just the pure color. So starting pure orange, ending pure blue, okay? But now look what happens when I choose different yellow and different blues and different reds, okay? Because it's going to change the look of that middle section, which is what I really want you guys to experiment with, is getting that gradual change, that scale. So I'll start with this yellow this time, and I'm going to add the magenta into it. Again, I started with my light and I added my darker color into my light. It's not quite orange enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm going to go right below. And already the orange is slightly different, right? It's like a little bit more, I'd say, I want to say like pinkish, but obviously because I'm using like a pink color, but maybe a little bit less, more opaque too, as you know, this color is a little bit more opaque than that one. Okay, now I'm going to add this blue, a little at a time. The littlest amount of blue. A little bit more. Okay, also notice that, oh, I have some white underneath that's a little bit wet, so it's going to change it slightly. Notice that it doesn't take as much of the color for this blue to change it than the other one. The other one I needed more of the blue to change that orange color. This one, not as much. Last one, clean off your brush. And then go with a straight color. Okay, so definitely a little bit different, okay? And then you'll do a third one, a different combination. So maybe I'd go back to the bright yellow, and instead of mixing the red into it, I'd mix the magenta into it to make my orange. And then instead of going to this blue here, I would do the ultramarine blue instead. Does that make sense? So you're trying to get a feel of how many different combinations of each complementary color you could do. I'm not going to continue to do the yellow and purple. You guys are going to do it. What I would like to see is that you have more than 5 steps. So this here I have step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? So that 9 steps, each one is very different than the one before. Sometimes what happens is when you're first learning to mix your colors, 3 of them tend to look almost exactly alike, and then the middle one is very, very different and dark. So really try your best to add very, very little at a time, okay? And then you're gonna get to your green, okay? And just same thing, like, you know, choose different colors, start with like a base green, and then see what happens. Like that could count as one green, right? So here I'll put it down. I want you to see if you can kind of control your brush too. Go with the edges of the box that you make. Notice how I'm changing direction of my paintbrush as I am moving it along to keep a nice edge. And then what happens when you take those 2 combinations and you add like a little bit of pink to it? Just the slightest bit of that magenta color. Not too much, but definitely gives it a more, I would say like an evergreen look. So if you have a landscape that has those really rich, dark greens to it, this might be the color choice that you use to get that color. Okay, and then what happens if I take that and I add a little bit of white, or maybe even a lot of white. So now just by starting with one combination of green, I have 3 very different colors. Okay, so for the bottom one, you can start adding white to your color mixtures. The top is just pure color. You're not putting any white into it, okay? And then when you get to your browns, you're trying to look in this middle section of where you started mixing your colors, and you're gonna start to think, okay, I wanna get maybe some of this brown. So I know I used magenta and I mixed the green, and then right in the middle when I put the 2 together, it made a brown. So maybe you start with that mixture and then you add some white into it. Maybe then you add a little bit more blue to it, okay? And then I'm not gonna show you this one, but I'm gonna challenge you to try to make a gray. Okay, so you're gonna end up mixing a pretty dark color, adding white to it's gonna make a gray. And I want you to see, once you get that color down, write down what colors you use to get that really, really dark, dark, dark color, almost black. And then how did you make it light gray, okay? Is that pretty crystal clear of what you're gonna do? So right now it is 12:52 and this period ends at what? 1:18. So I'm gonna say, let's take the time to first set up the boxes, and then if you need to finish your drawing, do that first, because this is gonna take some time to clean up. You can turn that off.